Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to go ahead and call our workshop to order this afternoon. I've got 1:31. It is December 6, 2022, and let's go ahead and call the meeting to order, and I'll ask our county manager to begin with some opening comments.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, Commissioners, and everyone. Today will be our first workshop, primarily having to do with the Recovery Task Force created by the County Commission a few weeks ago. But we also have a couple of representatives today from the federal government, including Small Business Administration and FEMA. And so we'd like to start with Small Business Administration. And Mark, would you please introduce our guest today? And then we'll get started.
Yes, sir. Would it be possible for FEMA to go first? They're kind of the lead agency, and SBA had requested.
Yep.
So thank you, Roger, and I will introduce to you today Mr. Bob Fogel. He's FEMA's Branch 6 Division Supervisor. He's assigned as the Federal Coordination Officer for the county. His team has been working real closely with county staff over the first couple weeks here after the storm through today. So Bob, if you would, you and your team have the floor for about a 5 to 6 minute update.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me here. It's been great. We've been working with Lee County before and after the disaster for quite a while, and all the municipalities within Lee County. As I said, I'm Bob Fogel. I'm the division director for Lee County. And then I've got with me over on my right, he'll come up in a second to talk about direct housing, Ken Clark, who is from our joint field office in Tampa, Florida, works directly in partnership with the state of Florida on the direct housing mission. So he'll tell you a little bit about what's going on there. And then I've got representatives from individual assistance as well as a national flood insurance program, should you have any questions on flood insurance, floodplain, et cetera. So just a high level, I just want to give you an update on where we are in terms of numbers. As you know, statewide now, we're at about $780 million that is distributed to survivors throughout the state of Florida. Within Lee County, of that $780 million, $323 million of that is for Lee County residents and survivors, with 1,722 maximum grants, which means they maxed out the FEMA either for their structure or for their contents, which obviously is a reflection of the significant and, as you know, very, very terrific impacts and disaster impacts from Hurricane Ian. Rental assistance, we have provided to Lee County residents $47 million to provide them rental assistance to find temporary places to live, and housing repair and assistance to help them make repairs to those homes. We have now provided $187 million in Lee County. And in other needs assessment, we have provided $87 million for their short-term and medium-term needs. So that's where we are today in terms of resources we provided, and I'll turn it over to Ken Clark to briefly tell you about our direct housing program.
Real quick before you, that number of people who you've given the max grants to, how many was that again?
1,722. And again, that's a representation of the fact that they had severe or complete damage or destruction to their residents.
Thank you.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. My name is Ken Clark, and I'm the branch director for our direct housing mission here for 4763, the current Ian disaster. What I'd like to do is just kind of give you an overview of the direct housing program, the elements of it, and also I'll start off with how you become eligible for the direct housing program. So far, you have to file with FEMA, so the telephone number that everybody's been given for registration. We take a look at that. We have our inspectors come out, take a look at verified losses on folks' housing. With an owner, you had to be $12 per square foot. That was kind of the qualifier for being able to get into the direct housing program for eligibility, or a renter whose home was totally destroyed or major damage. For Lee County, our initial eligibility was 12,411 folks that were eligible. So one of the things that we've been doing over the last couple of months is calling all of those. We've got it down to about 2,434 people that are approved for direct housing that we've called at least twice to get down to the point where we know that they have not found their own solution and are currently still requesting a need from the direct housing program from FEMA. The program itself is composed of three components. One is direct lease. We're currently doing contracts with property management companies to basically find rental properties or, vacation housing or whatever they have in their portfolio to be able to put eligible applicants or residents or survivors into those houses. So that's our direct lease program. We also have what's called multifamily lease and repair, where we are actually soliciting multifamily housing where the property owners are having issues with raising funds to repair those homes. In addition to the Small Business Administration, we have that as an option for multifamily housing. And so we are actively soliciting, and we've got a few potential locations where we might get some units where we can provide some repair dollars to the property owner in lieu of reduced rent for survivors in that program. Again, that's multifamily lease and repair. What everybody's most interested in, obviously, is our TTHU, our temporary transportable housing, our travel trailers, or our MHUs, manufactured housing. That basically goes in three different locations. Private sites. So we're currently looking at private sites where we can actually put a temporary unit on their private sites where it's right next to their house, preferably, that they're repairing. We're also looking at locations where commercial parks, so we're in the process of looking at those, along with evaluating group sites. Those are where we actually build an RV park where we can actually put survivors in. I think right now, based on the numbers that we're seeing on the availability of commercial park pads and the availability of private sites, it is leaning towards where we are going to have to take a look at group sites as a potential housing option.
Excuse me, sir, would you
Yes,
speak
sir.
up a little bit, please? Having an awful time.
Sure. Is that helpful?
Thank you.
Okay. So group sites is another thing that we've been taking a look at. So far we've had, we've looked at, for commercial parks, we've looked at 213 parks. 183 of them we've eliminated at this point for various reasons. Some of them are floodplain issues, unwillingness to work with FEMA and be able to get a government SAMS registration number, insufficient infrastructure, sewer, water, electric not or damaged, major debris cleanup required. Now, on those, we are taking a look at our commercial debris disposal and private property debris to be able to maybe get those parks back in service and maybe be able to get some units there. Unavailable pads. A lot of the commercial parks, the pads are already spoken for. Private parks with HOAs is another one. Currently, we're looking at 18 commercial parks that are in development, and we have 12 that are currently in assessment. Group sites, we had 203 sites identified. 140 sites have been eliminated. And again, a lot of the same types of issues. Floodplain issues, unwilling to work with FEMA, insufficient infrastructure, condition of the site, whether it's is fully vegetated and stuff like that. Size and shape may not be suitable for a location, and probably the biggest one is really just the proximity to the folks that have damaged structures. We want to make sure they try to keep them as close to their community resources as possible. And with that, that's really just that's generally an update on what we've been doing. We currently have, I'm not sure exactly the number of work orders, but we are currently actively doing site inspections with our, I think we have 600 and 685 site inspections that we're currently working, that are taking a look at the private sites to be able to measure how big of a unit we can put on there or whether or not it's feasible or not. We're running into about a feasibility rate of about 14.6% right now. So again, a lot of the private sites are being eliminated just because of the size of the lot. The closer we get to the coast, the smaller the lots are, and so there's just not room to put units on those properties, as well as a lot of floodplain issues.
Okay,
So,
I'm going to ask a question real
Sure.
quick. If I could jump in. You talked about the floodplain issues a couple of times, and I recognize that you probably didn't make these policies yourself.
Absolutely
But
not.
you're the person I have in front of me that I can
Yeah.
ask questions to. So, so hopefully you can help me with some answers. A big reason why we need the temporary housing is obviously because the area is flooded, right? So we recognize that this is a flood we're trying to recover from. I'm having a hard time here because we've got people who are flooded out of their homes. They need temporary housing, but now we're not going to allow them to put this temporary trailer next to their home because they're in a floodplain. You see what I'm getting
Sure.
at here? Like, I mean, these people need help. They need a temporary place to stay. What options do we have for relief from some of those policies and rules so that we can get these people into a better situation? Because I can tell you, if you go out there and look at some of these houses where they're gutted and stuff like that, there are people living in them right now because they want to be at their home or close to their home. And I think they'd be a lot more comfortable if they were able to get a trailer where they could have some amenities and some living space. And I don't know if it is an affidavit from the homeowner saying, look, I promise I will evacuate and not stay through a flood in this trailer, or if we need to open up and find some other sheltering opportunity where we promise we will get them in there. But to me, it just seems counterintuitive to say these people were flooded out of their homes, so therefore we can't give them temporary housing in the place where they were flooded, you know?
And I think obviously there's sheltering, there's TSA and the other means of trying to find people immediate. I think for us right now, our ability to put units at a specific location are not just dictated by our regulations, it's also the local floodplain ordinances that y'all have to manage locally. That's not really my expertise in the area. We have people that are the floodplain managers, as well as your local floodplain ordinances. I think there's been some allowance for temporary units to be put in those, and obviously we're following those. It's just a matter of which rules are most restrictive or are allowable. I think for us right now, that's why I'm saying as we go in and take a look at a lot of the locations, we obviously don't want to put units in areas that violate your own floodplain ordinances. So we want to make sure that we're taking a look at these group sites and the commercial parks that are in safer areas. So that's really the push right now, is to try to make sure to maximize I mean, I think we definitely are pushing to try to get private sites allowable, but we're limited by in a lot of cases the local floodplain ordinances, and it gets all back into your NFIP requirements and all of that. So and again, that's not my area, and we certainly can get some of our more experts, along with the state and your local floodplain people are the ones that we're trying to work with regards to what permitting is allowed for us to be able to put units on private sites.
I appreciate that, because I would love to know what resources we can work with to understand that. Commissioner Ruane, you had a follow-up question?
I do. I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. So maybe a different way of looking at this is, more short-term. I recognize that the community went through a devastation and there's in a floodplain, which maybe we look at in smaller bites and say, we're okay till June before hurricane season comes, but can we come up with a short-term gap and utilize that, and then come up with a longer-term gap? Because for you to eliminate 130,000 parcels that's been damaged in this, and trying to find extra space where we didn't have space to begin with, it seems like what we're doing is giving people a lot of false help and not really come up with solutions. And these require out-of-the-box thinking, and there's probably going to have to be some flexibility.
So, yeah, I'll take that. So a little bit further delineation. Right now, what we know is we cannot put a trailer or a temporary housing unit in a vector zone or a floodway. Absolutely impossible. You had a lot of people in this county that died from this storm. We will not be responsible as the federal government for putting people in a location where they are likely to have potential future risks. So that's a no-go. We are looking at every lot, every site. We were out with the municipalities in Sanibel, out on town of Fort Myers Beach with Dan Allers, with Ken and his team from the JFO, looking at all possible sites. And then we have a team studying them, looking at the floodplains in that specific area. Some of them are in a vector zone. Most of Fort Myers Beach is in a floodplain. 31.4% of this county, as you know, so the FEMA rules do not allow certain things, but we're looking at what is possible, what types of trailers may be possible, what the elevation is, the base flood elevation requirements. Each municipality, as well as the county, has its own rules for the floodplain. We're working with those, and we've already had discussions out in Sanibel about what variances might be possible, what kind of zoning changes the local municipality can make or the county for the unincorporated areas, and then what the state will allow in their floodplain management, and to keep the flood insurance program, if viable, for that community, so other people will have access to flood insurance. It is a pretty complicated process. It's one by one, each individual looking at that, and those are the strict limitations. I know Ken and his team is looking at that right now. What is temporarily viable for, say, 6 months, and then if there is a way that they might be viable for longer term. The real answer, though, is the most important thing to keep pushing for is direct lease. There are a lot of beach condos, beach properties. I visit 2 or 3 a day just trying to figure out who's got rental properties in this county near where people want to live that may be willing to take what FEMA rent will pay, and we're significantly higher than the GSA rate, but we're not what they were getting at Fort Myers or some of these other vacation properties, because you all know what happened in the rental market here, and you know what happened during COVID with everybody wanting to work remotely in these counties, and what happened to the real estate market. So we know there's a limitation on available rental stock already. We're in a very, very challenged area for rental stock availability, for hotel availability. 45% of the hotels were damaged or destroyed that are coming back. So we're working through that, and it's going to be in partnership. And we've had great partnerships so far with the county here, and we go out with our team. We have independent reps in every single one of the cities and municipalities to make sure that we're talking to the floodplain manager, the town managers, the political folks, to make sure that we're trying to figure out what is possible. So that's currently where we are.
I do appreciate the comment about the no-go or whatever it was that you said. Who changes that policy? Is that Congress or the president, or is that a FEMA person? Because, see, that's what we do. We're a policy board. We get elected by the people to make policy, and I just want to know who the policy board is that changes that so I could talk to them.
Yeah, so the National Flood Insurance Program is a national program, so it starts there with how these areas are defined. And that is FEMA's responsibility. I have one of the experts here. But beyond that, then it's state regulation, county regulation, and local regulations for their floodplain managers. So all disasters are state managed, state led, locally executed, and then federally supported. So at the basis of it, yes, it's based upon the National Flood Insurance Program and what's available, but every county, municipality, and state defines that themselves.
Yeah, he's going to help you. Okay, and like I said, I realize you guys didn't create it. I'm not trying to pick on you personally or anything like that. We're trying to help people out. I mean, as you just mentioned it, 34% of our county was in a floodplain. A lot of people lost their homes, and those people, they would like to be near their home as it gets repaired. And many of those people are sensible, smart people who evacuated on the day of Ian and who would absolutely evacuate if another storm was heading our way. And I think there's just got to be room for some help here. I think our county's been amazing. I've been so touched by the amount of people who have taken in friends and family members and have them living in their houses. There's multiple families in single family homes right now, because that's what we do when we're trying to help recover from a storm like this. But after about 6, 7, 8 months, that's going to get old. And people will want to get back to where they live.
Absolutely, and I think what you just said earlier is also very apropos. We have to be creative, so we have to work together. We have had amazing support. I've been in disasters. I'm a federal coordinating officer, is my normal role, which I work on the disaster for the whole state. I was sent here just to focus on Lee County because this is obviously ground zero, right? And so the reason we're here is it's going to happen in partnership. This is one of the most sophisticated emergency management teams I've ever seen. States don't have emergency management teams that are as qualified and capable as what you have here in Lee County, and they have partnered with us from the beginning to work through this and then out the municipality level. But what you said earlier is apropos. We are going to have to get creative, and that's working with you, working with the local municipalities on the zoning and building code compliance, figuring out what can be moved. For example, Lee County's already kind of worked through, it was a 10-foot setback on lots. 5-foot setback on lots for a trailer on a private site is going to qualify, we think, significant number of additional potential trailers on those lots. That's a big deal for us, right? And it's going through and having those conversations one-on-one with the municipalities and to find the creative solutions. But we rope in the state constantly because, again, FEMA's here to support the state in a state-led disaster, and we'll do everything we possibly can as long as it's legal.
I want to give our county manager an opportunity to reply, but I can tell you right now, as one of the 5 who will vote on it, and I bet you my colleagues will be right there behind me, if there are setbacks that need to be changed or any kind of land use type policies, I'll call a special meeting and we'll get in the courthouse tomorrow and we'll change it so that we can get our people where they need to be. So that please don't let local regulations stand in your way. Mr. County Manager.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. We do appreciate the partnership that we have with FEMA and the federal government and state government. But my question is, with all of the work that we've been doing and with all of the cooperation, how many private sites have been approved? How many of the travel trailers have been installed, and how many commercial parks have been approved?
Yeah, I think right now, I mean, we've out of the 685 private site inspections that we've been doing, 130 of them come back infeasible. 19 have been or came back feasible, and we have 11. And this is as of Friday. I think there's more today, but as of last Friday, we had 11 work orders that are out there. So we've got 11 units that are in the process of being installed, getting permits, getting electrical, sewer, and that sort of stuff.
And how many applications?
Yeah, I think that the total eligible folks right now are 2,434. Those are approved for direct housing, and a lot of them are currently in our commercial park or group site queue. They're not owners, so they don't necessarily have a private site to go to.
So far we have 11 people who've been approved, or families.
11 units that are in process of being put on place. We've been establishing our contract staging area, getting units, doing all the whittling down from the 12,000 people down to, and trying to make sure that we have a good understanding of who is and working directly with the individuals. And trying to figure out exactly where all of their properties are so we can sit down and also take a look at those commercial parks and group sites that are close to the affected areas.
All right, any further questions for the team from FEMA at all? Commissioner Greenwell, do you have any questions? No? Okay, very good. All right, thank you very much for the update, and look forward to continuing to working with you guys.
Thank you.
At this time, you wanted to call the Small Business Administration?
Please.
Okay.
Mark?
Commissioner, joining us from SBA is Ms. Tahita Mateen. She's a public affairs specialist assigned to cover Lee County as it relates to disaster assistance in response to Hurricane Ian.
Hello, good afternoon. Just a quick update from the SBA. We continue to urge business owners of any size, homeowners, renters, nonprofit organizations like churches to submit their SBA application. Right now, the SBA has approved over $1.1 billion in Florida. $625 million of that $1.1 billion has been approved in Lee County. So that's exciting news to hear. That number, a lot of those applications are still processing, so that number increases every day. The deadline to submit your physical damage deadline is January 12th, so we just want to make sure that your constituents know about that deadline. Of course, that was extended. As far as the business owners, they have until June 29th of 2023 to submit an application for working capital needs, which is, helping them stay in business, continue to pay the bills as if Hurricane Ian never happened. For those survivors who already have an SBA approval, they are eligible to increase that loan, that low interest loan, by 20% to help with mitigation. Is, for instance, they want to put in hurricane shutters or windows or raise their home. So they can increase their loan by 20% to do that. And we just got news today that the SBA is deferring those loan payments for 1 year from the date of each person's promissory note. And also there will be no interest accruals in that 1 year. Usually the SBA, while that deferment is happening, interest does still accrue, but we just got word that we're gonna not do the interest for that year. And also the first payment is due a year from their promissory note. And I just want to make sure that you all know, I have been in the area where assigned to Lee County. Just want to make sure if there's any business organizations that we can get to make sure that they understand how to navigate the process. I will be happy to do so and speak to whatever groups that I can. Right now, the businesses are applying, but they're a little slow to apply. If they see that word loan, people usually stop. But in disasters like this, it may take a loan to help you recover. The homeowners receive up to that $200,000. Even renters are eligible for that, up to $40,000 to replace their personal belongings, and business owners can receive up to that $2 million with their physical damages and their working capital needs. And that is it from the SBA. Subject to any questions, that's all that I have.
Commissioner Ruane?
Thank you very much. Appreciate the opportunity.
Of course.
So, a couple specific questions, really to the business world. So what do you do to a business owner who has a pandemic loan? I'm a business owner. I own 7 entities. I maxed out at each pandemic loan to $500,000. I owe the SBA $3.5 million. Am I still eligible to borrow under the disaster I'm faced with now?
It's 2 separate declarations, absolutely. So those people with those COVID EIDL loans, it's 2 separate declarations. Haven't heard anything yet, but once that Nicole comes down, if they were affected by Nicole and Ian, 2 separate declarations, yes.
Follow up, is the package more extensive that you require than we did during the EIDL period?
That's beyond my, that is a loan officer and a caseworker. For those business owners who have those detailed questions about their specific instance, it is best to visit a disaster recovery center, which SBA is on hand at all of those centers. But every specific situation, there may be something that happened with their COVID that was in default, or something happened with that where they can't borrow, or they didn't keep up the right insurance in a previous disaster. So those questions are a little bit specific.
Yeah, it was more specific. I know many people had EIDL loans and they paid them back, and now they wish they had them. So
You said now they wish they
had them.
had.
Had the funds available, so they paid them back. Okay.
Gotcha.
So again, I'm a business owner. Okay, I have 7 different businesses. I borrowed $500,000. It's $3.5 billion. I paid them all back to you. Now the disaster comes. I still have 7 businesses with the same issues. So could you see where I might be better from a cash flow point of view?
Right, exactly.
Just
I mean,
trying to understand the particulars, want to help the business community.
yeah, exactly. Me too. So for those businesses who have several businesses, they, just like you said, they had the idle, they paid back the idle, now they wish they had it. Unfortunately, these disasters are going to happen, and we are there for that long-term recovery. So they can apply again. I mean, some people see that word, and again, they stop. For those homeowners and those renters, many of them have been referred to the SBA. Again, they see the word loan, they stop. But in order for us to refer them back to FEMA for additional grant consideration, they do have to come through the SBA. If for some reason we can't help them, we will refer them back, to FEMA. And that's just the whole community aspect of recovery. There's not one agency or one county or one city entity that can help a person recover from something like this. So we just want to make sure that those tools are out there for your constituents to have access to and use and work through the process.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any further questions, commissioners, for the SBA? No. One question I hear from a lot of business owners, and maybe you've already touched on it though, is just, I actually took out an SBA loan during the pandemic. Am I able to take out another one? And also, I think a lot of them are reluctant to take out a second one. Do you have a message for those businesses?
While we are here, while FEMA's here, while SBA is here in your city, in your county, use that resource. Yes, you can take out a loan. If you've had an idle loan, you can take out a loan. If those business owners, and this is something you have to take back and let them know, if they need a deferment from that COVID idle, if they're still paying it, absolutely. Talk to your case manager and your loan processing center to say, hey, you need to pause those payments because I just had a hurricane to strike me and I need help and I need to apply for SBA loan. Absolutely. Ask for a deferment. They can apply again. And, the COVID was something we all faced. This is something, very, the county in Florida. So, yes, absolutely.
Thanks, Ms. Mateen. Appreciate that.
And I want to say one more thing. And if they are reluctant, I have found that the reluctancy comes from the lack of information. So that's my job in Lee County and surrounding counties, is to make sure that those business owners, those survivors have the information and the facts of the program to make a decision from there. But we just don't want to make it, that people feel like they're left out and don't know the information. So we just want to make sure that, everybody knows that. And again, I will hang around for a little bit. If you have any groups, those underserved populations that I need to speak to, I am willing to do that as well. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, very good. All right, Mr. County Manager, at this time, is it time to invite the Recovery Task Force presentation, or do you have any more from the?
No, sir, I think those two presentations were helpful, but it is, you're right, it is time. As you recall, a couple weeks ago, the County Commission created the task force and appointed Commissioner Ruane as the chair of that task force, and today he's going to talk with us about the makeup of the task force, how it's going to work, and some other detail. Commissioner?
Thank you very much, County Commissioners. And it's a privilege to have the opportunity to help Lee County recover. That's what we need to do. And some of the information we heard today is really helpful. As we'll get into more details, as we get into specifics, we'll be able to ascertain from people, from our community, what their needs are and continue to make sure we educate and, more importantly, make sure we guide the message as we, as policymakers have, as we come across the different issues. So it's really important to try to understand what we need to do. So my first thought was, and working closely with a private company, is to try to come up with a brand for the task force. Think of something that might be catchy, because that's the first thing you do in business. It's, how do I remember? So, our thought was to try to come up with some concepts. So the TVs probably give a much better photographic thing of it, but it was really bold, it's generous, it's united, it's tireless, it's diligent, it's urgent, it's clear. Resiliently. So the caption of resiliently.org is really a website that we have secured the name for. And again, trying to come up with image so people remember us. Websites are very important for many people to have a way to go to and look at the different aspects of our recovery. And as we get into the branches and we get into the elected officials, it'll give you an indication of what this looks like. And we all had the privilege of working at the EOC and having Bay County come down and kind of talk about what they did. And our staff put together a very similar plan. What is most essential about this is just the opportunity to have the public weigh in. It's essential that their communication, it's their public comment we're all looking for to make sure we understand, as you talked about SBA, how do we communicate that message so the economic recovery can take place? How do we centralize things and work through the process and make sure people understand that they can get an idle loan or they have an idle loan that might be able to be deferred because their business has now been paralyzed. Those opportunities, I look at many people as far as the branches and the sub-branches communicating those issues. So we continue to update our community. Recovery is the key, and honestly, when you try to come up with something. So we just played around with a whole bunch of concepts. Again, trying to come up with some stock images for the concept of resiliently. I go through the R, the L, it looks like a house. Again, just trying to go through the concept of what we are, and it's really a branding process that one goes through. Having run multiple companies, brands are really important, and you try to create an image that people remember. So again, invest, build, image-ly, resiliently. Again, taking I figured that's been all through the news, Sanibel Lighthouse, and obviously that damage, just looking again, how do we rebuild? Coming up with hats, t-shirts, whatever, we can brand this any way you'd like to try to have the community, with many of the nonprofits, have the opportunity to buy these types of things, sell them, come up with it. I do it in my private companies many times, not only having the ability to have a tagline, ability to have some type of a logo, some trademark, and the ability to market that to the public. And I think there's so many people that want to help us in so many ways. So it's just, the first thing really was a concept of a brand. When we start to go into the task force itself, so what do we have to do as a task force? I'm going to jump to a page. So the task force, really the governance of this is one that would say, I'm going to go one step, there you go. So it's from every city. So every city has a seat at the table. Law enforcement, fire, Lee County School District, Lee Health, the delegation and constitutional offices are really the task force. So everyone gets together as a group. What we learned from Bay County and what many of the commissioners had indicated, that the constitutional office was essential. They give you really good information. And the delegation, having the chair of the delegation would be helpful because they're going to carry the message. They're part of our community, so how you do that. Having the different offices that you have from elected people, it's really important, as we learned yesterday when we had Representative Rommel down, as well as Representative Grant, is our message is united. It's as streamlined as we possibly can as we go in there. They understand the devastation, and the good news about our community is we've had so many dignitaries down here, from the Speaker of the House to the Senate President. We've taken tours around with them. So they've seen the devastation. They understand what it is, and their hearts go out to us. We need to try to look through the process. So that's really the formation. So that's the elected body. The second part of it, if I go back one, is really, okay, what do we deliver? So first and foremost, we appoint branch leaders and branch coordinators. Our branch basically has about 9 different components to it, but that branch is, you talk about building, planning, and capacity. Someone like Commissioner Greenwell, where you have someone that might be like Sid Kitchen that would have the opportunity to look at what our building needs are, to try to work through the process, have each one of us have some type of interest that we might have in a particular branch, so we understand what those needs are, and we address those as best we can. So we appoint branch leads, appoint the coordinators, convene the task force, convene and orientate the branch leads, identify and secure branch resources. So as we go through this process, we'll continue to get data, we'll get research, and that's really what we're trying to do, is build the platform, build what the community needs. Initially assess the needs, the projects, determine the funding required. And as policymakers, we're going to try to go and advocate the best we can to not only make policy decisions, but to make sure we get appropriations not only from FEMA, but from the state and the federal government. It's really important that we communicate that plan. So that's really the deliverables as I see them, and we're trying to do this at the 30,000-foot level. Went through and really talked to each mayor within it. Some mayors had indicated appoint somebody else, but mostly what you're finding is people that obviously are in that particular position, identified the people throughout so we understand the task force members. Tried to come up with logos, understand some of the regional strategic plans we're going to have to go through when it comes to building and planning. So the Lee plan, the Sanibel plan, Lee Health, to go through that aspect as well. Sorry, a little sensitive. So when you look at the opportunity and, we want to maximize resources. We want to align and coordinate. We want to innovate and act, endure legacy. So respect, recover, rebuild, and reimagine. Again, those are our goals as the task force looks at it, united in that aspect. Again, resiliency and innovation. So within the branches, we look at every particular area. So we have infrastructure. We just talked about housing. So the branch is an opportunity to talk about FEMA, to come through the policy things and the challenge that we have, whether it's local or state or federal. Again, planning, building, and capacity. What are the issues we're going to have? What setbacks? How do we do the things that the chairman had talked about? Do we need to make a policy change to come up with side setbacks, whether it's temporary or long-term? Natural resources. We're so surrounded by water, and it's such an important aspect. Economic recovery, SBA, as we continue to communicate, how do people recover? We talk to chambers, we talk to realtors, we have the opportunity to understand our business community, and we provide the vehicles, we provide the opportunity for them to understand what we're doing. Education and workforce, again, just a needed part of this process. Health and social services and cultural resources. So again, branches will have an opportunity to gather information, do research, interact with the community, bring it back to the task force itself, and then we obviously go, as we go one step further, and identify. So the task force recommends to the Board of County Commissioners the Recovery and Resiliency Plan, coordinate necessary branch action. We survey the immediate short-term and long-term needs of Lee County. We identify and engage key partners and address the needs. We develop the feasibility, the desirability, action solutions to meet these needs, research, funding, and availability to implement those solutions, recommended policies required to implement those solutions. I have not necessarily talked with any of you, but how often do we meet as we go through the needs? Because the needs will be plentiful and they'll start to level out, and that's what we're going to do. We could work through the logistics. Again, I was trying to give a 30,000-foot view of this on what I vision this to be, not having the opportunity to communicate to any of you, but just going through and culling through different plans that have been out there, not only Bay County, but certainly many of the other communities that have had devastation as we go through that, looking at our own Lee County plans. So these are some of the things that, we kind of put together. The planning structure, again, all the people that are associated with the task force, again, the branches from the bottom, whether it's housing or infrastructure, education, economic recovery, they feed up to the task force, we feed up to the county commissioners, and we all make the decisions necessary for policy, funding, and communication. That's really the big picture that I tried to envision, to try to lay it out to the commissioners. It's a lot to digest, but again, I've been trying to work very independently as I can to put together what I believe, working with a facilitating company, and it's actually been collaboratory that's worked with me locally. And I've had the privilege of working with them for a lot of years. I've been involved in a lot of the different aspects. But just trying to come up with a concept, trying to come up with a brand, trying to come up with a structure so we can gather information and we could rebuild this back better than we wanted to. We could harden the situation and really have the opportunity to gather the appropriate public input that's necessary for us to make the best policy decisions we can, and more importantly, try to do the best we can to find the necessary funding to make sure we go forward with this. That's my 30,000-foot overview, Commissioners. I'm open to any questions. Again, this isn't set in stone, but this is something I just, I've been working on for the last month or so to put together for you all.
Anybody have any questions or follow up on that? Chair Ruane, I wanted to talk real quickly. What is your vision for how the administration and the staff can support each of the branches and the advisory committee that the long-term recovery task force is as they do their work? So for instance, let me give you an example. We're going to have a branch on economic recovery. Would you envision the Economic Development Office and maybe the Tourism, the Visitor and Convention Bureau having staff be there to help brief the branch on what damage and concerns they've seen and what policies they might need advice on?
Sure, and and go one step further, you might have people that actually participate on the branch to try to help us. What we're trying to do is have the VCB, we're trying to have the chambers give us information, what you're hearing from the constituents out there. The most important thing is to gather information from the different sources, funnel them through and say, okay, what does economic recovery look like? And what are the challenges we have out there? So we're trying to coordinate that the best we can. Staff will help, obviously, disseminate all the information, drive it back up to us as policy people to try to filter through what is, again, you're going to do, think of a SIRAT, where you go through on boards and you say, okay, here's some thoughts. And we try to come up with consistency, we come up with consensus, and we move forward. So that's kind of what I vision, again, open to staff. And this is just, my first version of trying to put together this and trying to vision this in a way that we have the public engaged. And I want to use every asset that we possibly have, but staff has to do the day-to-day things. We have to recover, we still have administration. So as economic, when you look at building planning and capacity, we're going to be inundated with permits. So how do we process those? What do we go through the process of that? There's so many aspects of this, and we're all going to be working together to try to get the necessary resources. So if you think about the multiple aspects of this recovery, I think staff is wonderful, but there's only so much capacity staff is going to have. And I also believe the private people in this community have made investments. The businesses have made investments, so they want to be part of the solution as well. And they've made a real investment in the community, the economic return they're looking for. So they've been invested in this community. So working in tandem with them, again, I think this is, as we continue to filter this, I think as we clarify this as best we can, but this is my vision at the 30,000 foot level, and we can continue to tighten details, but I want to kind of just give a layout of what I culled through some 300 pages, and I've looked at about 6 or 7 different plans.
I also wanted to compliment you on the Resilient Lee brand and the domain name. I thought that was very catchy. Wanted to just have you gotten a chance to develop any logistics for how that website will be populated? Maybe what kind of input you'll take in from the website? Any thoughts on that?
So again, I'd love to have a facilitating company from the outside that we work with to do those types of things, to have a robust, having been in the private sector for the last 30 years and having run multiple companies, websites are really important, but gathering the information that's necessary. Again, people will be 10 o'clock in the evening, they're not going to pick up the phone and call you, Commissioner, or myself, but they have an opportunity to say, you know what, under housing, we need to do this. And we have so many needs here, I think, as we filter through those. So it's going to be really essential to try to have everybody collaborate together, but I look at a facilitating company, a website being the opportunity to gather information as best we can, and we disseminate that information and try to make the best policy decisions we can and help us recover. But the website's going to be a really important component. Love to see that built and have a robust capacity to gather information, collect information, and obviously disseminate it.
Commissioners, any other questions? Yeah, Commissioner Greenwell. Just touch the bottom light. There you go.
Good job. Commissioner, I guess one of the things that I think would be important as we move forward, obviously we're all getting inundated with questions, 50-50 rule, when are we picking up debris, all those things. So I know myself, I come in, I speak with staff and try to get those things answered, and they do a great job, and they do always answer them for us. I think having another layer of this, obviously, is going to be a positive thing, especially to help get out the information to the community. I guess my question is, as we move forward, do we have some idea of how we're going to communicate, with us being limited on what we can do together, obviously? Obviously, it'll be done in these meetings here. But is staff going to work with the task force? I guess, in other words, if I have an issue and I bring it to Mark, are we going to have a way to make sure that gets back to you or whoever's involved in this task force to make sure that we're answering it to the mass of people, not just a few?
So again, I'll break it down to a level as you just asked the question. So you're on building planning and capacity. It's an area you're interested in. You filter the various issues that you have. You then, obviously, I look at the county commissioners dealing with this on an ongoing basis. This will be an agenda item we have because it's going to be a new item that we constantly have. And we'll make the decisions and we'll get together. We'll have more of these workshops as we go through the intense process, which is going to be probably the next 3 to 6 months, to less intense process as we filter off. Those opportunities, yes, staff will be helpful through the process, the opportunities, but you're going to be part of the solution as well. You're going to sit there from a building point of view and say, this makes sense, that doesn't make sense. Try to help us, as Commissioner Hammond had indicated, there's policy decisions we're trying to make. We're making them as quickly as possible. So it's a team effort. It's the public. It's certainly us. It's staff. But again, my biggest concern has always been this: we have enough staff to do all the different aspects we have to, and how much capacity do we have? So trying to utilize as many different resources that we can, and understanding the public wants to be very much engaged in this process. And builders that you work with that are in this community that continue to make investments in it, they're the ones on the front line understanding the issues that they have for side setbacks or front setbacks, or what you do or how you do it. Chambers and realtors will talk about economic recovery. Various areas will talk about housing, as we knew it was a problem before. So again, I think we're going to work through this process. I think we're going to continue to refine this process. Again, this isn't the book written from cover to cover. This is an introduction, the way I vision this. I'll continue to work with staff. I wanted this opportunity to help us recover. I wanted this opportunity to have the public engaged, have the public input, work with staff, and utilize the best of all, but not burn anyone out. This is going to be a marathon, and I'm quite concerned of just how much we all can do and how much can we get stretched. If that makes sense.
Commissioner Sandelli, any questions?
First of all, Kevin, thank you for taking on this task among everything else, and to everybody who's working on this. I look at this as I take my notes. I see two different things. One is the fact that we know where we were. We were always looking to where we're going to go, and that's great. I think the frustration, Kevin and I were at a meeting last night down at Fort Myers Beach, is that it's never fast enough. It's never quick enough, and so on and so forth. So I hope that in this process that we'll see some commonalities and priorities, and if we can focus collectively as well as individually on those priorities, if we can move things along, continue to move things along, people will see the change, and they'll be encouraged by that, and then encourage participation. I think when, if we look at our solid waste group, every day it's getting better and better, and people see that, we feel like we're moving forward. So if we can establish those priorities, work on those, and sometimes the change may be a little bit minuscule, but we're working towards that end. I think that's going to encourage the engagement of the community.
Ray, I couldn't agree with you more. I mean, that's really what we're looking to do, and utilize us as a team. This is one big team. If anything we've learned from the storm, we're going to need help from every aspect and every level possible. So how do we work collectively, collaboratively in the most efficient way to try to get the policy decision we need to make, and how do you filter through that? Because everybody, what I'm hoping this does is maybe eliminate some emails to each of us individually, and now there's an opportunity to funnel your questions in a specific area. I got housing questions, okay? I got infrastructure questions. I got natural resource questions. Because I think once we get past debris, and that's where we are right now, debris is kind of like the hangover. I hate to use that word, but that's kind of where we are, okay? And the next aspect of this is to move forward. The debris also just reminds everybody of the storm, and it helps us, when that's removed, to move forward with recovery. Right now, people are just stuck in that world, the way I look at it, and just trying to be as candid as I can and trying to work through this. Roger and I have sat down on 4 or 5 different concepts. I envision continue to work with Roger and continue to work with staff, because honestly, that's how we make this happen. But I also want to have as much resources. We have a firm like Haggerty to go out and maximize the opportunity to get funding for us, but also look at an outside company to help facilitate this, to organize meetings and make sure we get the various information so we filter it back up. And that's really what I envision.
You and I both come from the private sector.
Uh-huh.
So we have that, that common edge to us, you know. When I start talking policies and all the stuff that we hear, I get glassy in the eyes and stuff like this. Just get it done, you know. I think Brian was feeling that a little while ago. And if that's the policy and we have to do this, let's change it. We'll call a special meeting. And I realize that's oversimplification. But, you know, we need to move changes. We need to be adaptable and not get bogged down in the other stuff. Somebody who's smarter than me, which is a lot of other people, will take care of that stuff. So thanks, Kevin.
I was hoping really to try to accomplish a brand concept and make sure we thought that was a neat idea to try to have the community understand what we're about. And 2, to try to come up with different platforms to have us gather information, to be more efficient, to have the community know, okay, I can go to this branch, I can go to that branch, and us as policymakers get a flavor for what that particular branch is running into, if it comes housing or if it becomes infrastructure or natural resources. You know, today we heard about shrimp boats and cleaning up the back bays. Those are going to be issues, and as you have releases from Lake O, again, they'll be in natural resources, but it's a conduit where you're able to gather information. Right now, we're just getting inundated with emails on all different topics. And again, if we could funnel different topics and have people give that information, I just think it's going to be most productive for us. And I think the community also feel there's a way to communicate in a different way. And that's what I'm hoping we're able to do. So it's to come up with a brand, to come up with people from our community so we could help also educate them. When we go to Tallahassee, we go to Washington, it's a universal situation we look for. And then, you know, the community then has that opportunity to go to the website and talk and work with us. And we'll coordinate with staff. By no means do I think I'm any place other than the first chapter of this book. I look forward to working with staff. It's been a delight to be here. I look forward to us recovering, and I know we have the ability to do so.
Well, one final question I had too, just where do you see tourism fitting in on the branches? Do we consider
Recovery, economic recovery.
Economic recovery, okay.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's vital to our economic recovery. It's what we are. So, you know, when you look at the 3 stools, that's definitely the hospitality, tourism, you know, is what we are. And, you know, at some point in time, we'll be more robust in that area. Right now, you know, we have some limitations on where we can do and what we can't do. And I'm sure you, as the chair of the TDC, will get to talk about those types of things. And again, looking for input as best we can.
Excellent. Thank you.
But is everybody from the county commission, you guys okay with the concept? You go okay with the brand? Anything that is offensive? Huh? I gladly will. I will make the first donation.
It's either an XL or it's a petite. I haven't figured out my size yet.
Any other questions I can answer?
Any further questions? Mr. County Manager?
Thank you.
Thank you, commissioners. I really appreciate it.
Mr. County Manager, is there any further business before us then?
Commissioner, that's all we have for you today, and we appreciate your time.
Before we close up, since it was, yeah, Commissioner Greenwell, go ahead.
On the recovery, do we know where we're at, because we get this question a lot, on, we still have to make another pass through the county to pick up debris? Do we know where we're at? Are we completed with 2 passes? Have we started on the 3rd pass? Do we know kind of somewhere similar to where we might be?
Yes, sir. Glenn?
Yes, sir. So where we are is we are making continuous passes. So it's a little difficult to say first pass, second pass, et cetera. The areas that are most impacted and where we see the most construction and demolition recharge, meaning it just keeps coming to the curb, we just keep crews there continuously. So, you know, it all blends together. That said, what we will be able to say, I think definitively, is that every single area of the county will have received a minimum of first pass by the Christmas holiday. But of course, most areas will have seen much more than that. As you know, we've collected almost 4.2 million cubic yards just in unincorporated Lee County alone. So it continues moving very quickly in that regard, although certainly understand the sentiment that it's never fast enough if it's your debris.
So would it be, it's too early, I would assume then, it's too early to say, I think it will be important at some point to be able to say to the community that we're just about done here. We need to, if you got it, you better get it out there. You know, do we do that at some point, I guess? Will there be a deadline that we will notify the community with at some point?
Yes, sir, we will. We probably will have to do that by area. So for instance, if you're in Lehigh Acres, that time is going to be very soon.
Gotcha.
Yes.
Yes.
But if you're in San Carlos Island, that will take much longer.
Right. Okay, that truly answers the question very well, actually, and I never thought about sections, and that does make a whole lot of sense, because places that aren't hit are going to be, we're not going to continue to have to go through there. So,
Commissioner, please feel comfortable in telling your constituents, when you get that question, we're going to be at it as long as it takes, and as fast as we can make it happen.
Mike, what I have found helpful is that it's not a matter of just passes, that there's a pickup, then there's, you know, they take to the debris sites, it's got to be separated, and then to a final resting place. They understand the process helps a little bit. And I was at the Coconut site 10 days ago, and they gave me an estimate, you know, of when that site will be cleared. So I can take them through the process, we're not just dumping it and stuff like this, go through the process, and here's an end game date, okay, then they're set. So that seems to be working for me until I get the next phone call or something.
All right, Commissioners, before we leave the table today, I want to recap something I heard today and try and see if we can help give our staff some direction on where we would like to go with this. So one of the things that I heard today was we're 66 days since landfall, and we've got 11 FEMA units in process to help house people. And we've got, I heard a list of potentially 12,411 eligible for that housing, 2,434 were approved for that housing. So I may be wrong. I tried copying these down as I heard them. So one of the things that I heard was there may be local ordinances or local regulations that are prohibiting or keeping FEMA units from being placed. How can we get in a room around a table with the FEMA reps to figure out what that is that needs to be fixed, and then how quickly can we make some changes to get our people some help?
Commissioner, I think we have the answer to some of those questions, but there's still work to do. So Mark, would you sort of just give the board an update?
Absolutely. We continue to work with FEMA officials here on the ground. Nothing has surfaced so far as we can change ordinances or regulations that would permit those trailers in those areas. There's nothing that we're aware of that we could change that would expedite or allow them to put them there. What it appears to us, these are regulations that FEMA has that prevents them from being placed in those areas that are flood zones.
Very good. Mr. County Attorney?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, let me assure you that if any federal or state agency identified a local prohibition that was standing in the way, we would address that immediately, whether that be through ordinance change, which I would point out that we cannot do via an emergency ordinance. However, there are ordinances, and there's a question of enforcement and timely enforcement versus placement as a matter of public necessity. So please know that if any prohibition has been identified as a local issue, we will resolve that immediately.
Mr. Ruane, yeah, Commissioner. Just the bottom line.
Got it. So I agree, and thank you, Mr. County Attorney. I know we'll move as quickly as possible locally. I think as we can start to separate what is a state issue, what is a federal issue, it'll help us a great deal as I do envision this team going to Tallahassee, and we could break them down. Here's our state, issues, because housing is going to be it. And then we can go to the federal and obviously do with that. I think until we kind of put them into list, as you just had done, Mr. Chairman, if you can identify the numbers and say, okay, here's local issues. Okay, we'll deal with those. Here's state issues, here's federal issues. So we have an idea as policymakers, as people could advocate, what do we need to do? What agency we've got to go through? And again, I'll go back to a task force concept, again, housing being an issue. You know, again, if we could bifurcate things and work together collectively, you have so many groups that want to help, and so many people are affected by it, whether you got Lee Health looking for housing or any other aspect. The more we could disseminate and break down this information, the better we're going to be as policymakers and advocates. And no one's going to advocate for this community better than we will as a team. I'm confident in that. So it's just my 2 cents.
Mr. County Manager?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, one of the things that we originally thought we would do today is a presentation on all of the housing opportunities that currently exist that we, as county staff, have been working on for quite some time. And there's a lot more work underway and a lot more opportunity than what has been discussed today. For someone to say that there are 12,400 people eligible and we've got 11 of those trailers coming, I've never heard so much baloney in my life. The bureaucratic nonsense is about to make my head explode. But we will, sometime next week or so, we'll be briefing you on all the housing opportunities that currently exist. And as Mark and the county attorney have said, if someone will identify an impediment for us, we'll remove it. And one last thing, having been at the FAC meeting on Thursday of this week with Kevin Guthrie, State Emergency Management Director, Kevin made the statement that the state has purchased about 700 motorhomes that they will have available for people who fall through the cracks. And I got a feeling that people living in Fort Myers Beach have fallen through the cracks. And so I'm hopeful that, you know, we'll be able to work something out with the state sooner than later.
All right, look forward to it. And that, yes.
I made one last thing. I think we all felt that way in the room. I wanted to explode, actually, when they said 11 people have been helped. That's just amazing to say that. So I think as a task force, that's something that really we should really try to put together, where we get some kind of direction for these people and help them to find places to be, because obviously there must be a lot of people out there struggling to where they're staying tonight. I think it's crazy.
I mean, I look forward to, you know, trying to work closer with Roger to try to get the information back to you all, because I know once we break it down to what the issue is, local, state, or federal, we as a collective team will attack that in the best way we can and help our constituents. So I'm confident, you know what, and Roger's been, you know, and his team's been really helpful as I built this and tried to come up with this. And this is what we need to do for our community. And housing, we had a problem before this happened. I can't even think of, you go through areas, Pine Island's got the same issues throughout the whole entire thing. You know, like trailer parks where you got people shutting water off. So it's heartbreaking, and we need to come up with solutions, and we really got to cut through the bureaucracy as quick as we can.
Very good.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any further discussion? Mr. County Manager, anything?
No, sir. Thank you.
All right.
Thank you, gentlemen. I appreciate the opportunity.
Thank you, and we're adjourned. Thank you.